Hello and welcome back to my basement. Hey, this is Jeremiah Wolf. Every time I start a video, I always adjust. I just realize this every single time. I introduce myself and then I adjust the mic. I don't know. Anyway, so this is Jeremiah Wolf, and I wanted to make a video. I recently got a comment on one of my videos where the person was very respectful, but they also disagreed with me about a point. And of course, they're entitled to their opinion. But I wanted to explain more of why I disagree with this person, and and you can make your own choice. Before we get into that, though, I had a really interesting experience the other day. So today is a Saturday. Yesterday, Friday, I called my cable company because I noticed that there was this service agreement on my bill, and I don't remember ever signing up for any kind of service agreement, so I wanted to get that removed. Excuse me. So I get through to their customer service. I'm talking to this gentleman, and look, it's his job. But of course, he said he agrees to remove the service plan, but then he tries to upsell me on some other things, which whatever. So as he's trying to upsell me, at one point, look, I learned long ago it's almost impossible to win an argument with these people. So it's easier just to say, you know what, I'm a network engineer. I know how this stuff works. I'll take care of that myself. Thank you very much. So I said that to this guy. Hey, I appreciate it, but I'm a network engineer. I'll handle my own Wi-Fi. Thank you. And he says, "Oh, really? You're a network engineer?" So it turns out that this young man, well, I assume he's a young man, wants to get into networking. It's kind of a dream job of his, and he's working, help desk at a. Well, he's in the Philippines. The ISP is here in the United States. I assume he's part of a contracting company. But we had a little conversation about networking. It was pretty brief. Obviously, he's on the phone. He can't really, talk a whole lot. But it was cool. It was just cool to connect with someone who has an interest in networking, on the other side of the planet, and I was able to give him a little bit of a, hey, why don't you look into this and see if maybe it'll help you out. So that was cool. It was just fun. But anyway, so let's take a look at this here. Can I zoom in? Yeah. So, this is on my Encore exam video, and in that video, I go into great lengths talking about why I was unhappy with INE, and I much preferred the CBT Nuggets approach. And what it boiled down to was that INE was over 200 or 250 hours of video courses for the CCNP, whereas CBT Nuggets was like 50 hours. And to me, that just made a lot more sense. I personally don't learn very well via video courses. There's benefit to it for me, but the idea of sitting there for so long just doesn't make sense to me. So let's read through this. So I'm watching your videos and accidentally found this one. Although I totally agree with you, like 99% of the topics, man, you are so wrong here. I don't understand how you cannot recommend INE and go for CBT Nuggets. Yeah, we understand your situation with your kid, your family, and stuff, but you can't do that. I'm not quite sure what he means by that. Like, not sure what that has to do with why I recommend CBT Nuggets, but you can't do that. You simply can't. After all, we're chasing knowledge and not certification by itself. With INE, you cannot go wrong. CBT is barely scratching the surface, and the way you study, it's your way, of course, but you cannot study for such a big exam like Encore for 1 month. You simply can't. You have no time to study properly. You cannot lab enough. I'm studying for my CCIE, and guess what? I'm on EIGRP for 2 weeks now, and still there's a lot to learn. Except this, I appreciate your content. I hope everything is well in your life. God bless you and your baby boy. That's very kind. Thank you. Okay, so I see Andre's point here, and I understand why a lot of people might think that. But again, this video wasn't about studying for your CCIE. It was studying for Encore. Now, Encore is the written exam for the CCIE. It is the first step in your CCIE. And for most people, that first step happens a year or 18 months before they go take the actual test. So for most people, the CCIE written is something you do months, if not a year or more, before you go do the lab. So when you take the Encore, you are not at a CCIE level. You're at a CCNP level. Now let's look. I didn't open this ahead of time, so let me do this real quick. Sorry about that. Cisco.com. Actually, let's do this. Encore exam topics. Encore exam topics. Cisco Learning Network. Okay. So, again, taking a look at his comment, I'm studying for my CCIE, and guess what? I'm on EIGRP for 2 weeks. Now, again, he's commenting on a video about the Encore exam. So I'm going to assume that what he's saying is I'm studying for my Encore exam because I'm going for, ultimately, my CCIE. So I'm going to assume that that's what he means. Maybe it's not. But because he commented on a video about Encore, I'm going to assume that he's working on the Enterprise Core Encore exam. So where is it? Infrastructure? Security network. Oh, yeah, it is under infrastructure. Okay. Here's the IGRP on the Encore exam. Compare routing concepts of EIGRP and OSPF. That's it. There is no configuration. There is no troubleshooting. There is no, old way versus new way. There's no IPv4 versus IPv6. There's no MPLS. There's no multifamily protocol. There's none of that. It's compare routing concepts. Concepts. You should learn this in an hour or two. An hour or two. Not 2 weeks. An hour or two. Compare the concepts. This is the most high-level knowledge of EIGRP. In the NRC exam, we get into EIGRP quite a bit more. But we're not talking about NRC. We're not talking about the CCIE lab. We're talking about the Encore written exam. So this is why I disagree with this gentleman so much. And I am so not trying to, attack or shame or anything. He was very respectful. I'm trying to be respectful in return. But I do really disagree with him. And this is the big reason. So his main complaint is, why am I promoting CBT nuggets over INE? And this is specifically it. When I started going through the exam topics for Encore and comparing it to what we were spending time on with INE, there was no correlation. INE, their CCNP course, was mostly about the CCIE lab. Now, this is very important because there are people like this gentleman and like myself who took the Encore exam as part of their CCIE progression. But there are many more people who will take the CCNP Encore exam as part of their CCNP. CCIE isn't even on their radar. It's years away. So we need to be very realistic here, and this is your time. So listen, if you want to study, let me come up with an analogy here. So imagine that you're going to university, okay? It's your freshman year, but you want to do, your intent is to do pre-med. So you want to finish your undergrad, you want to go on to medical school, okay? So you're in Biology 101, right? You're freshman biology. And the professor says, all right, for this semester, this is our text, and we're going to read these 10 chapters out of this text. Out of the 50 that are in there, 40 chapters that are in this book, we're going to read 10 of them. And you say, okay, Well, that's great, but I'm not here just to learn what's in this class. I'm going to be a doctor, so I'm going to read this entire book, and then I'm going to go to the library, and I'm going to get out a stack of books on biology, and I'm going to read all of those. And you know what? If you do that, you might ace your Biology 101 class, but you've also just wasted hours and hours and hours and hours of your time, because that's not where you were at. Where you're at was Biology 101. Let's stay focused on where you're at. Let's do this. Let's do this. So let's come over here, and let's say this is, so we're going to draw a little graph here. This is your knowledge, and this is time. Okay? So when you start off, you have zero knowledge. And when you're studying for an exam, so let's say you're studying for Encore exam, you're going to be reading the book, you're going to be doing labs, and your knowledge is going to spike pretty quickly. Okay? It's going to spike pretty quickly. And because this is Encore level, it's not CCIE level yet, lab, we're going to stop here. And then what's going to happen is you're going to kind of plateau there for a week or two as you do labs and you prepare for the test, you do practice tests. Literally, the moment you walk out of the testing center, it drops significantly. This is just how the brain works. So the moment you walk out of the testing center, you've just lost a crap ton of the stuff you just studied. And then, over time, that's going to decrease. So if you go months and months without doing EIGRP, say, it's going to whittle away. And, some of it will stay there. So maybe it plateaus here or down here. I don't know. So you're going to retain some of it, but most of it's going to go away. However, let's look at this differently. Let's say that you prepare for the exam. And you're not preparing for EIGRP this time because that wasn't on the exam. So whatever the topic is, again, you increase quite a bit. Then you plateau. You take the exam and you lose a bunch. And then you start working on other things, so it starts to dwindle. But then you come back to it. And you dig back into it. And you start doing more labs and reading more books. And now your knowledge is up here. And it kind of plateaus, and then it starts to dwindle again. And then you come back to it a few weeks later, and you're reading some more about it, you're doing some more labs, and your knowledge grows, and then it plateaus, and then it starts to dwindle. And then you come back to it a few weeks later, and your knowledge grows, and you plateau, and then it starts to dwindle, and then you go take your exam. And now when you take your exam, you're way more knowledgeable than you were when you walked out of so this is when you walked out of the written exam. This was like later that day, or maybe, a few days later, you were down here. But now you're kind of up here. And the interesting thing is, because you've been doing this so frequently, you've been, over weeks or months, you keep returning to it. You're reinforcing that in your brain. You're reinforcing it. You're letting your brain call the weak information when you walk away from it. What happens is you retain some of that, but then some of it is called by your brain. The weak stuff is called your weak knowledge. So when you come back, you're reinforcing the things you know, and you're reinforcing the things that you were weak on, and they're starting to become stronger things. And what happens is the things that you were strong on here, the strong things here, your brain doesn't have to spend a whole lot of energy. So when you come here, all the stuff that you were strong on, your brain doesn't really have to work to retain that. It's there. It's pretty solid. So now it's expending all of its energy learning new stuff. And then that starts to get weaker. And then when you come over here and do another round of studying, all the things that were strong here are retained, and your brain doesn't have to expend energy remembering and reinforcing that, so it can focus more on learning the things that you were weak on. So by doing it in stages like this, the whole process becomes dramatically easier, and ultimately you retain vastly more information. If you just come in here, let's create let's just switch colors. So we'll come over here. So if you come in here and you're saying, okay, I'm going to study for this, and I'm going to go balls deep on EIGRP, and bam, I'm just studying EIGRP, and I'm doing a month's worth of labs or week's worth of labs. What's going to happen is the moment you stop, it's going to start dropping quickly, because your brain needs time to clean out the chaff, to call the weak information, to reinforce the strong information. And you know what? You can do this method, but in the long term, especially for something like the CCIE, where you're studying for a year, or sometimes 9 to 18 months for most people that you're studying, this technique of going all in on one topic isn't going to benefit you, because what's going to happen is, can I get rid of this? So let's say that this white line is EIGRP. Okay, let's come back here. So this is EIGRP, and then let's say that this blue line is OSPF. So you work on EIGRP, and then once you start doing the labs on your EIGRP, then you start reading about OSPF. So there's a couple week delay, and it's the same thing. Okay, so now blue is OSPF, and then let's say that green is your BGP. So again, now you're working on labs for OSPF, so you start reading about BGP, then you start labbing your BGP. Sorry, I'm getting sloppy now because I'm just trying to get through this quickly. So by hitting many topics, you do some layer 2, then you do some layer 3, then you do some SD-WAN stuff, then you come back and then you build on what you've already started with layer 2, then you build on what you started with layer 3, then you build on what you were working on with automation or whatever. So when you keep hitting these topics over and over and over again, and each time you're building, ultimately that knowledge becomes ingrained much deeper in your brain. You not only do you learn it, but you know it. It becomes part of who you are, and you retain more and more and more of it. So this is the style that you want to study on, especially for something long term. Now, this isn't going to work if you're doing your CCNA in a month, or in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. You don't have that much time. But when you're studying for a year and a half, this is how you want to do things. You want to hit the different topics, then come back and hit them again a little more in depth, then come back and hit them again a little more in depth. And each time you're going to remember more. You're going to find some things you forgot. You're going to find some things that you were wrong about that you have to now remember. And that's how you turn that sort of knowledge into wisdom, if you will, or experience, maybe is a better word. So that's why I disagree with what this gentleman is saying. And that's also why I really think it's important to study for where you're at. So, for example, when I was studying for the Encore exam, yes, I wasn't studying for CCIE. I was studying for the Encore exam, because I'm going to take that exam. I want to do well on that exam. And then when that exam is over, I'm going to move on to the next topic. But a few months later, I'm going to come back and I'm going to revisit the topics that were on the encore exam. I'm going to learn them a little more in depth. And then I'm going to walk away and study some other things. And then I'm going to come back and revisit those topics over and over again over a year or year and a half until they become part of who I am. So that's why when you look at my study strategy, I'm going through all the Cisco certs. Why not? I have to learn all of those things. So I'm going to learn the encore stuff at the encore level. I'm going to learn the NRC stuff at the NRC level. I'm going to learn the in salad stuff at the in salad level, the design, and the in sandwich, the SD-WAN stuff at the exam level. And then I'm going to come back to it after the exam and revisit it for all of those things. So it's this looping method. So again, why spend ridiculous amounts of time? Why spend 200 hours studying for an exam when you're going to forget half of the stuff you study the moment you're done with the exam? Study for what you're working on. And keep in mind, again, so, this gentleman, he's working on his CCNP. Where's the... Nope, wrong one. He's working on his CCIE. So maybe for him, it makes sense to spend a lot of time doing the CCNP course. Even though he's working on a CCIE, I'm not sure why he would be doing his CCNP course through INE. So, but I don't know. Maybe he's only a few weeks away from taking his test, or maybe he's only a month away. But for me, I'm still months away. I'm kind of I'm all off track because of the kids and stuff. But so it's sort of it's an iterative process. You learn some, you move on, you come back, you learn more. And what's important is just because he is studying for the CCIE doesn't mean you are. So if maybe you're just studying for the MP. So it makes a lot of sense. You might be 5 years away from doing your CCIE. So why would you learn at a CCIE level? And the thing that I talk about I think I talk about this in the video too, which is also very important, is most people are taking these tests to kind of help them where they're at in their career today. Maybe your employer says, hey, we want you to get your CCNP. So if you go take the encore exam and you spend, 2 weeks or a month studying EIGRP just so you can pass, so you can compare routing concepts. I don't know why you would do that. Spend a month or weeks studying something you don't need to know. But then what happens when you go back to the office after taking the test, and in the office you guys are 100% OSPF, or maybe you only use RIP or something. I don't know. So then all that knowledge is just you just wasted all that time. So study for where you're at. Don't study for where you're going to be 2 years from now. You got to work your way there, but you got to study for where you're at right now. So I appreciate what Andrea is saying here. And again, I don't know his specific situation. He does say he's studying for the CCIE. So for him, this approach probably makes a lot more sense for him. But for me, for where I'm at, and for the most of the people who are taking the encore exam, I'm not sure this really makes sense. Instead, I highly recommend this approach where when you're studying long term, you hit a topic, learn it for a while, practice it for a while, walk away for a few weeks or a couple months, then come back to it. And all the meanwhile, you're staggering other topics. You keep learning new stuff. Each of them you're learning a little bit, then you come back to it, you're going to learn a little bit more. So I'm kind of repeating myself, but I hope that makes sense. And if you disagree with me, hey, put it in the comments. Let's have a conversation, all right? Nobody's right or wrong here. I don't have all the answers. I'm just sharing what works for me. So there you go. Hey, this is Jeremiah. I hope you'd enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.